Well, good morning, guys. It is your buddy Ryan here, coming to you from the Moondance Homestead in the windswept mountains of Central California. It is a lovely day. We're just coming into fall now, and I thought I'd give you a little quick tour of my garden in the fall. Some things have changed, and a lot of things are looking really, really fruitful. So let's go ahead and start here on the right. My first thing I have down here in my orchard, you can see I kind of have it organized on a hillside. That way there's plenty of great drainage that comes down. Another reason for that is this hillside was so eroded when I moved in. I needed to do something to stabilize it because my house is at the top. So it's worked out to be a really nice orchard. Anytime it rains, it drains, right? So the water flows down the hill. I've covered the whole thing in straw, manure, various mulches over the past few years. And now it is no longer just an eroded hillside. It has a thick layer of mulch with mycelium from mushrooms growing in it, as well as plenty of wild grasses and wild flowers that I just let stay alive and thrive. I maybe cut it down once a year so we get a nice mulch layer. But as you can see, some green is starting to come up. Usually stays brown all summer. We get some green in the fall and sometimes the spring, and the midsummer is usually where it stays hot and brown. But you might be able to see it here on the hillside, things glistening. Here in California, we had a tropical depression make landfall, which is very unusual here on the West Coast. And we got a ton of water coming in, okay? And what makes that interesting here is now you can see it sort of starting to seep out of my hill and pool here at the bottom in front of this corn plant. And that is precisely why I decided to have all of these raised beds at the bottom of the hill. Because as water seeps down slowly, some does end up down in the raised beds, just gets wicked up out of the ground. So basically what I've done is I've created a giant water battery here to store it, and it seems to be working pretty well so far. It's a very dry, arid environment here in Tehachapi, California, and yet my stuff is thriving, and lots of others have a lot of trouble gardening here. So developed a few methods to help with that. You can see this here is my corn growing out of the geo bin. I started that at the beginning of the summer, made a quick video about it. It is doing great. This is glass gym corn. You can see some ears developing right there. Now over here, one thing I've done that's interesting in the garden, I have taken any spots where previous bushes or things were growing that didn't make it through the winter or didn't make it through the heat of summer, and I planted some Jaredell blue pumpkin seeds, so we'll see a number of those as we go through today. You can see one over there on the hill too. Now of course we have some of the Navajo popping corn I've talked about in previous videos. It's growing a little bit taller than the glass gym over there. And the reason I wanted to grow this stuff is because I wanted to crossbreed it with the glass gym, get a hybrid variety going. I like that it has lots of reds and blacks in the color. I like that it's made for popping, and I think I could get some interesting color combinations mixed with the glass gym corn. And already I'm seeing it grows a little bit more vigorously in this environment than my glass gym, so it should make a good combination. Don't know what those guys are. Let's see here. We have some more glass gym corn. This one came out a little runtier. It's in a bigger bed that has better drainage, so it has had some trouble staying moist this summer. So you can see some of the cobs are a little stunted, but we should still get some corn off of it, fingers crossed. This is a jujube tree here. I've had it for 3 years. It has not grown much, but it does survive, and hopefully we'll get to eat some jujubes off of that guy eventually. Here is my Japanese sweet potato bed. I got one sweet potato from an Asian grocer back in February, and my goodness, I've just let it grow. I used it to make lots of slips early on, transferred those slips into pots, and then rooted them, and then placed those in the garden in early spring. And it has just gone on and on. Cool thing about sweet potatoes, if you don't know, you can actually eat the leaves. Mmm, so delicious. It tastes a little bit sweet, a little bit floral, fresh, almost like you're eating a rose petal. And if you haven't done it, I recommend it. Rose petals are delicious. But they make really good, sort of a spinachy green. They're so prolific that when you grow sweet potatoes, you get the benefit of the potatoes when they're done, and you also get to eat pretty much as many leaves as you want going on. I have some other sweet potato in the garden I typically harvest more leaves from. I'm letting this guy put all of its energy towards making sweet potatoes though, so I don't pick too many leaves from it. Over here I've got my cold hardy pomegranate. It is also taking its sweet time to grow, but eventually maybe we'll get some pomegranates. This one is one of my favorites. If you guys have never heard of a ground cherry or a poha berry, this is what it is. We'll pull up my netting here so we can take a little look. Sorry if the camera has trouble focusing for a sec. Okay, so now we're in the bed, and we can see right here, those are going to be the little berries. You can see they grow just like tomatillos. In fact, they're very closely related to tomatillos. And when they come out, those little pods, those little lanterns will turn brown and fall onto the ground. I think that's probably one reason it's called a ground cherry. But the great thing about this is it's a single season fruit crop. So it'll grow prolific berries throughout the summer. And they taste just like, kind of a mix between passion fruit, mango, things like that, pineapple, very tropical in flavor. And here you can see my tomatillo plants. Now, the key to know about tomatillos so that you can be successful is to plant at least 2, okay? This patch started out as 6 tomatillo plants, but we have such bad ants and moles and other critters here that we ended up being just down to 1. And so I had to plant several seeds out here because in my area, believe it or not, in Central California, it is super hard to find tomatillos generally, and it's almost impossible to find tomatillo plants. So I've had to grow all of mine from seed. I don't know if that's the case throughout Central and Southern California, but for me, at least up here in the mountains, no one really seems to be interested in green chili or tomatillos or salsa verde. Now, me being from Colorado originally, tomatillos are a huge part of my life. And so regardless, when 5 of my original 6 tomatillo plants died, I ended up having to grow another one from seed. So I have a purple tomatillo growing side by side with a green tomatillo. My hope then is not necessarily that I'll get purple or green tomatillos next year specifically from the seeds, but I'll have vigorous hybrid seeds. And maybe we can, grow these out since they seem to be more pest resistant than the others and see if I can raise my success rate. But you can see there's just a ton of tomatillos in here. And this whole bed is literally just 2 tomatillo plants. And there's some onions down at the base too. So we are expecting a really stellar lead. All these flowers are getting pollinated by bees right now. I think a few more weeks we will be in Green Chili City here. And maybe I'll get some of these Californians into Chili Verde. And you can see my apple tree here. This one came with the property. We have 1 measly apple growing on it. You can see all my other fruit trees and bushes. They're all doing pretty well. I've done orchard tours in previous videos, so I'm not going to name everything today. This video is about the garden. Now, you can see here, pumpkin, pumpkin, pumpkin. These are all Jaredale blue pumpkins I've grown from my own seed. Got horseradish sitting out here. And then some of the other new additions. Let's see, there's a pumpkin. There is another pumpkin over there. Where is it? Here we are. And then another fun little addition out here in the food forest. We have Nanking cherries doing pretty good. We also have comfrey, and this is a really good plant. If you're in my situation, you're trying to build up soil. This stuff pulls minerals out and makes a great compost. So it puts a deep taproot in, and any of those leaves, if I use them as a top dressing at the base of any of my trees here, we're going to get some really good nutrients, minerals specifically brought to the surface for them. So eventually this comfrey plant, once it gets big enough and has enough roots, I'm going to break it up and spread it all over the garden, or rather all over the orchard, and we'll see how that goes. Let's get into the top beds. These are the beds that were here when I bought the property. I built all the ones below myself, but this is part of the reason we bought this house. So you can see I have peas growing along a trellis here. We have such bad critters here for beans that we just can't grow them on the property. I've tried dozens of times. I can grow broad beans, but no green beans, and I can grow peas. But all the critters here love wax beans. So we're giving it a shot, focusing more on peas than beans right now. There's another lovely Jaredell blue pumpkin, just growing on out. Casper pumpkin, I believe. Crookneck squash. Then this is some of the sweet potatoes up top I told you about. I usually just harvest this fella for leaves. I'm going to do so soon because it's kind of starting to get out of its area. You can see this is a not so happy zucchini. It is bouncing back, but it just had some ants snip through most of the stem a couple days ago. So what I did is I piled up some soil over the broken stem and kept it really moist. The idea is I'm trying to reroot it. And you can see now with some perky leaves, it appears to be working. So fingers crossed on that. I believe here we have our cantaloupe. Looks like we're starting to get some little flowers. My chickens are being noisy over there. Gosh, I'm not sure what this is. It might be a honeydew. I think I did plant a honeydew. Not doing great. New Zealand spinach. That's doing quite nice. Now all of this you got to bear in mind. It may look kind of scrawny for those of you who have been growing pumpkins all summer and vines all summer. But for me, I planted all of this at the beginning of July because that's when I harvested my potatoes and this space became available. If you're from the Midwest or somewhere further north, don't worry. My first frost isn't until October 19th, so I have plenty of time to grow these out to fruit. You can see a zucchini here. It's already flowering. We're growing some zucchini down there. So, doing good. I left this spot kind of barren, so I have an area to trap moles. Moles have been getting into my garden. It's just kind of part of living up here. There's moles, voles, ground squirrels, prairie dogs, ants, roly-polies, earwigs, you name it, we got it. But here's more New Zealand spinach. If you guys haven't tried New Zealand spinach, it's really great. You can pick these leaves off. It does okay in salty soil, which is why I got it. The soil is very salty when I started this garden. And then it has just sort of reseeded itself and showed back up, which is fine. I love it. What you have to do with it, though, before you cook with it, before you eat it, you put it in a little bit of a hot water, boiling water. Let's pour it over. That's called blanching. You want to blanch it for like a minute, then pour that water off. Give it a good rinse. It's because these have lots of oxalates in it, even more so than like a Swiss chard, which you can just, eat straight up if you do it in moderation. Well, these fellas, it'll be very bitter if you don't pre-blanch it before you cook with it. Ask me how I know, But butting right up against it is this big, beautiful sweet potato plant here too. I'm very happy to see this growing so well. We finally got rid of the mole and it's just thrived. I imagine part of the reason it might be doing so well is there might be a dead mole under the ground fertilizing it. We'll see. Now we have my cherry tomatoes. You can see I've got them trellised. They kind of grow up and over the trellis and get wild. So I've had to add a few support stakes, but I just harvested yesterday. There's still a bunch more tomatoes. This particular variety of tomato grows really, really tall. If you give it an 8-foot trellis, it will grow to the top of your 8-foot trellis. If you give it a 10-foot trellis, it is possible it could grow to the top of your 10-foot trellis. And it's called a sweetie tomato. It makes the sweetest tomatoes I've ever had. They're small, and delicious, and they're great not just for salads. I cook with them. I make spaghetti sauce, curry, salsa, all the rest of it. Not to say I don't believe in paste tomatoes, because I do have some nice San Marzanos growing in right here. And just spreading beyond belief as well. I also have some yellow pear tomatoes. That is what this one here is. You can see, oh, there's one coming in. And I have my aromas and, of course, more New Zealand spinach. You might be asking, why does this guy plant so much New Zealand spinach? I don't. It just seeded itself, and I'm okay with that. You know, generally speaking, in terms of volunteers, I just go for it if something plants itself. You know, 9 times out of 10, it ends up being pretty vigorous. Okay, so we are going to head out front now and check out my citrus and cactus growing area. There's just one exciting thing in there. I won't beat a dead horse for you, though, because I know we've looked at these guys before. So, here's my finger lime. Okay, my lemon's back here. You can see it's making some lemons. I'm happy with that. But one thing that I think is really cool is I actually managed to find, here they are, some baby Australian finger limes coming in. So you see those? Those things right here. Those are going to grow into Australian finger limes. If you ever heard of the caviar lime, that's the same thing. See, my banana trees are thriving. I put my apple trees from seed back here. They're getting repotted into bigger pots today. And then finally, we're going to go past the rabbit hutch and the quail hutch. Pan the camera over my car so you don't see my license plates. And let's go in the front door here. Okay, so here is my out front garden. And I was talking to you earlier about volunteers. Well, this pumpkin is a compost pumpkin. I do not know what kind it is. I assume it's probably Jared Blue, but we did get a Halloween pumpkin last year for the kids to carve from the grocery store. I grow food or plants for eating, so I don't grow ornamental pumpkins or flowers or things like that typically. But this just sprouted up in the corner when I added some mulch midsummer, and I'm just letting the vine grow up and over my netting. And it's got this nice arch support, so I'm going to let it grow over this section. I've tried planting some beans in here and spraying them with neem oil to try to keep the critters away, and that's been semi-effective, but I can tell their days are numbered. Got peas, big old kale plant. These are the broad beans I was telling you guys about. These are edamame I'm growing out. Anywhere that's blank right now, too, I've planted with beets. My collards are just doing phenomenal. I just need to eat some of them. As you can tell, I'm not the best at eating my greens, but I do try to eat some every day. If, you know, I wish I could eat enough to keep up with these plants. Egyptian walking onions bouncing back. You can see I've planted a lot of the bulbs that come off the top and to make new onion plants here. So a bunch of onions. Great thing about these guys is I like to eat them all in the spring and all in the fall when they're growing fast. And then in the sort of empty time all winter, I have shallots stored, so I will eat through those when these stop growing. And then those will come back next year, and I'll plant more shallots next year. I don't buy onions anymore. We have banana peppers here, strawberry patch, not thriving, but definitely growing and spreading. You know, it's year 1 with these guys, so I'm okay with that turn of events. I just am letting them slowly spread as far as they want to go. And this blank patch here is all going to be beets. Okay, so beets are planted, they're just not up yet. I'll post a video when they are. Then last thing over here I'd like to show you is I have finally established a mint patch. So I just did a pretty heavy harvest from this yesterday, so it looks a little small. I added some worm castings to it, so overall it's looking very good. You know, I can't ask for much more up here. It's hard to get mint established, so you know, it's normally, now don't tell me in the comments it's easy to establish mint. I know. It's hard to establish mint up here. It's very windy and dry. So, you know, a lot of things you take for granted in other locations, like growing as many green beans or as much mint as you want, is a little bit more challenge. But pumpkin, for some reason, does really well up here, as does greens. So anyway, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.